Welcome, welcome. So sorry for the wait. We have a couple capitalists was trying to stop us from having this conversation. So we're getting started a little bit late, but we have this powerful panel of powerful people to have this dialogue around capitalism, Black capitalism, and its role in our liberation. So today our panel are with probably some of our favorite minds in the African community. I'm going to bring each of them on and let them introduce themselves. But the flow of the conversation is each panelist will start off with a closing statement. At the beginning, they're going to give their closing statement and answer one of the pre-questions that we threw in before. And then after that, me and Asaf are going to bounce some other questions off of them. And each of the other panelists will have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions, as well as you in the audience. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can ask clarifying questions. And then towards the end, it will be more of intellectual struggles if there need be. Now, I'm not sure if anybody on the panel will have intellectual struggles, but you might be feeling some type of way about what's said. And so you definitely can bring your challenges and your thought. So I'm bringing my esteemed, powerful panel in. I think one of our panelists will show up soon. And then we'll get started with the dialogue. So everybody go ahead and introduce themselves one by one, and then we'll get started.
Hello, my name is Kundai, and I am a member of the African People's Socialist Party, led by Chairman and founded by Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
Thank you. All right.
Peace, everyone. My name is Akwesi Prince Mensa, based here out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Your community storyteller. Just trying to design some curriculums around adult literacy and political education centered around anti-capitalism and starting to teach more about scientific socialism in our neighborhood. So it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to this build and also being able to learn so much from everyone here on this panel. So thank you so much for having me.
Hold on, Diallo, you gotta come off mute. My bad, Diallo. There we go.
My name is Bro Diallo, broadcaster out of south side of Chicago, and I'm a revolutionary Pan-Africanist.
My guy. Safo, nobody don't know who you are. You just random guy that's sitting there. So introduce yourself. Come off mute though.
My name is Asafo Shaka Sekou, and I'm a founding member of the Barter and Build think tank.
Right. And I'm a representative of Bill Cosby, and we're free now. I'm joking. No. All right, so look, this is how we're going to flow. We're going to go with Kundai. We're going to go with Prince. Then we're going to go with Diallo. And then Nneka, as she comes in, she'll be the fourth person. But like I said, they're going to have their closing statement. They got 3 to 4 minutes to give their closing statement about this topic and probably tie in one of their answers. So I'll keep the timer. After they go, just make sure you give your clarifying questions if you have one in the comments. Watching on YouTube or Facebook, please hit the share button and invite your friends who are capitalists or who are not. Go ahead, Kundai, you first.
Thank you again for having inviting me onto this discussion panel. And so again, my name is Kundai, and I'm a member of the African People's Socialist Party. And the African People's Socialist Party is a revolutionary organization, again, founded by Chairman Omali Yeshitela in 1972. And our goal is the complete and total liberation of African people. So obviously that's the what's guiding, all of my responses is the theory of African internationalism that we work off of. And so around the question of capitalism, even Black capitalism, no matter how you paint it or dress it up, it's still capitalism. And tying it into the first question, we are often confronted with the question of if capital isn't the driving force, or if we don't, outside of capitalism, how will we function? How can we sustain ourselves? And the reality is that there's nothing sustainable about capitalism itself, for one. And our communities can be built up, and we can develop our communities and our economic development, our social and personal relationships outside of capitalism through socialism, obviously African Youth Socialist Party. I'm a socialist. I believe in communism. And the way we do this is through where the poor working class will control the means of production. And so we can still produce life for ourselves in a much more sustainable way and create our own institutions, create our own economic development, which at one point we, African people, we were a self-determining, self-governing people. And we will once again be that after a revolution, after the defeat of colonial capitalism. Capitalism in every way is violent and keeps the people of the world oppressed. Obviously, right now we're talking about Black people or African people. Capitalism keeps us doing busy work as opposed to developing our communities, which is why you see very gentrified areas, particularly here in the U.S. And even on the continent of Africa, you see very wealthy neighborhoods and communities. The creation of we see different classes, and really, we will still have economic development. Businesses will still be developed. However, we will. It'll work in our interest. It'll be a way of building up our community. There'll be no more classes. The poor working class will become the temporary ruling class, where we already produce life. We already move businesses. However, it just doesn't serve the Black community. And so I think it's not something that's unrealistic or something that won't ever happen, or, whatever the case may be. This is something that African people have been doing since our existence. But that was interrupted during, what's now called Europeans invading Africa and the theft, rape, and slavery of our people and our land.
Thank you. So, is there any clarifying questions about what she was said by any of the other panelists or anybody from the audience? I have something to kind of push a little bit. So oftentimes when you think of anything that's not capitalism, we are approached with this, oh, you're living in a fairy tale world. Like, how are we going to eat? Can you go and kind of clarify that?
Yes. I hate when people say, like, oh, you're trying to live in utopia. I don't know what that is, but I know we can not just take the good from our past, like go back to a pre-colonized Africa, because everything in a pre-colonized Africa wasn't perfect. But we can develop science and develop different procedures and policies in place that can advance our people past the utopia. We can create a real world. And so in terms of like, how do we do those things like food? We created agriculture. We were the first farmers. And so we can, one of our programs through the All African People's Development Empowerment Project, which is a mass organization that was founded by the party. One of the main responsibilities of ABDEP is to build community gardens, collectives, and community farms as a way of addressing food deserts, the current contradiction that we face with under capitalism, that most Black people, especially in project houses in the U.S. and in shanty towns in Africa, live in food deserts. So one is addressing the current contradiction of food deserts. And then two is a way, it's one of the most practical ways of teaching what it means to be self-sufficient, is teaching people how to feed themselves. And so the community gardens, farms, and garden collectives teach our people how to feed ourselves. And it's something that I think a lot of times, especially in this country, in the U.S., that we kind of shy away from a little bit because we identified as slave work. But again, we were the first agriculturalists, but it's been given a bad light because our relationship to agriculture since our existence in this country. And so we garden. And even when you look at gardening and the agricultural work that happens in Africa, we are the workers of the world. We are the sharecroppers of Africa, but the only thing is, again, we don't control the means of production. So we produce all these crops, but but the Black community doesn't benefit from it. The African community doesn't benefit from it. So, and even ABDEP has a responsibility of also building youth educational programs. We have a Marcus Garvey Youth Program, or Marcus Garvey Youth School, Saturday School, that we used to have. And again, look at how many Black educators that we know. Again, but when the narrative is controlled by the colonizer, none of the educational systems under capitalism serve us. And so we're not lacking skills, we're not lacking education. What we're lacking is an organizational vehicle that's going to move us forward and put us on a trajectory to being a self-determining people. And once we are self-determining people, we can even look at how to redevelop the school system, again, which is something that we're currently doing now. Because we can't just wait till the defeat of capitalism and be like, oh, how are we going to do all these things? We learning to do these things now, and we have to learn to that develops the consciousness and the security in the people. You want me to go ahead and answer that one?
So you want to tackle some of the questions that are popping up in the comments?
Yeah. Okay. So, is there no socialism we can go for apart from socialism if we get rid of capitalism? No. Thank you, Dr. Tafari, for that question. There is, and let me just say, Dr. Tafari is the director of organizations for our party on the continent of Africa, located in South Africa. So I really appreciate them participating in this. But no, the way forward for African people is socialism. And some of you may consider yourself communist, or I don't know, some people may not understand, but it's going to take a period of socialism for us to reach communism. And so that's why I said in the beginning, I am a socialist and do believe in communism, but it's not fairy tale land where it's just like revolution revolution is not a single event and then boom, you pop up into communism. It's going to take years and a period of struggle and decolonizing ourselves, learning how to build institutions, how to the banks, the businesses, down to being able to produce toilet paper, something to wipe, just everything, the very basic essentials of life, having a process in order of for all of that. And so, and two social systems can't exist at the same time. So, as we know, capitalism is a social system that currently rules the world. And at the defeat of colonial capitalism, it must be socialism. In our movement, the chairman kind of coined a phrase like the road to socialism is painted in black. So I think there's no other better thing for Black people to participate in other than creating socialism, building a revolution to live under a socialist economy.
All right, so there's a couple more, but we'll table those for later on, so we can dialogue around that. We'll go with Brother Prince right now with his closing statement and answering one of the pre-questions.
Yeah, thanks again, you all, for having me. And I definitely agree with everything that our sister comrade just had mentioned about the ways in which Black capitalism and capitalism in general does nothing for us. So when I talk about I'm a firm believer in intercommunalism, right? Like what the Black Panthers were pretty much all about. I am a firm believer in communism, but it's also interesting how I kind of like came into communism, really. I grew up as a conservative, actually, my whole entire life. And it wasn't really until I started reading about the ideas of our people, specifically W.E.B. Du Bois, and starting reading work by C.L.R. James, and of course the late great Cedric Robinson, that I really started to see, the real inherent problems that we have in our society, and to really answer the first question, right? Like, well, what are Black people supposed to do in terms of survival and things like that? Like, we have to build infrastructures. I just think that the same system that brought us into chattel slavery cannot be in good faith the same system that can set us free, right? Capital accumulation began and started, with our families becoming chattel slaves on those plantations. And so I just think, well, logically, the same thing that put us into chains can't be the same system that can set us free. Capitalism is inherently an unstable economic system that is centered around hierarchical powers and centered around the idea that, only a few can own the means of productions, right? But it's also the workers that are also contributing, to this wealth, right? And so it's just one of those weird contradictions, right? Like this whole idea that if we can somehow have a democracy, right, or whatever, this political economy, that our economic systems can't really mirror that, right? So when I read stories or like reading W.E.B. Du Bois's book on Black Reconstruction. I just saw that was a path forward for this apartheid society to go into full-on socialism. And I just think that is something that, we really need to hunker down on. But really quickly, I just want to say that, oh, great. I thought I was down to like 30 seconds or something. But, I really want to also talk about the ways in which, like, Black survival it always expresses itself within the collective consciousness of Black people, right? It doesn't matter if you're on the left or you're on the right, right? Like, we're all trying to survive. But you just have to be really conscious of, what political and economic framework that is informing your survival. And I think that most Black capitalists can end up finding, just I did as for myself, that some of the things that Black capitalists want to aspire to, they can actually have that under a socialist model centered around Black labor interest and Black amassing of Black political power. And I just think that we get really kind of caught up within these fairy tales that are deeply informed by the white supremacist liberal capitalist regimes, right? Like, we think that this system is somehow neutral, that if it works for the white corporate or the elite class, and somehow it's going to work out for us. But yet we've seen throughout history that, we've done everything for for this society. We picked their cotton, and, it's just ridiculous. I think, the chasing paper, the chasing of banknotes, right? It's just absurd. Banknotes are made 95% cotton, 75% linen. And I just think that, despite Black people's best efforts under entrepreneurship and Black capitalism, and even through our labor, Black people are still picking this stuff. And so I just think that we have to get really real about the conditions facing our people and send this stuff right back to hell. Like, that's just how I feel about it. So thank you for your time. So hopefully that made sense.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So for the people that coming in, we are going through each panelist's closing statement or argument about the topic, and they're tying in one of our pre-questions in there. And so we just went with Kundai. Prince was second, then Bro Diallo, and then we'll finish with Nneka. But is there any clarifying questions for Prince? The things that he just said, anything that you want to clarify? I can start with one of John's from the audience. So anybody from the audience, definitely work on that. Go ahead. So.
No, I was going to say the question from John Lattimore would be a good place to start.
All right. So if we had a communist government, won't the few control the resources to delegate to the masses of people, and also even have strict control over the masses of people, deny human rights?
Is that for me or?
Yeah. That's for you.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to be very clear, right? Like, well, first of all, there's never been a communist country ever. There's only been socialist regimes under the Communist Party, right? So I think it becomes very debatable, right? When we kind of see these so-called human rights, abuses and things like that. Obviously, there are contradictions, right, between everything, right? And those are things that socialist regimes definitely have worked out before. There's so many great examples of how socialist countries, even in Africa, how they started out, like they were doing a great job, right? Like you look at what Ghana was doing during that time, or even in Burkina Faso. There's just so many really great examples to really kind of like really build off on. But I think that because of this anti-communist kind of propaganda that has saturated our consciousness, I don't even think that we're asking the right questions, right? A lot of times when we're talking about communism and things like that, because I believe that communism is one of the most democratic things that there is, right? Even in the root word of communism, you have community. Right. And even Karl Marx had talked about how African people, just like our sister comrade just mentioned here, is that people were sharing these resources, naturally and together in terms of community and things like that. And almost paradoxically, it has given birth to some of these like amazing African feudal lord empires, right? So there's something to really kind of be said there. I think we have to also understand too is that human beings have different ways of organizing economies, right? Like, and capitalism is just one of those ways. And I think that some of the stuff that people are saying that is against capitalism, it takes away the abuses of human rights, they control food resources. Those are the things that exist within this regime right now, right? And I'm looking forward to kind of going into that a little bit more as we get into these discussions. But we do see the abuse of human rights, especially like how, they treat Black people and Africans here, on this stolen land. So that's one. And then we also see how this society continues to take away our wealth, all the labor and the wealth that we help to generate, like in our own respective cities. It's just absurd, but, they'll take that away, right? Or they'll take that wealth and give it to their corporate friends or whatever, but not give it back to the hood. Like nobody wants to bail out, Black people, poor working class folks. So, we got to keep it real. Like, that's just it. So hopefully that makes sense. But I'm glad he asked that question because it is super important. So thank you.
No, that's beautiful. We can expect a lot of knee-jerk reactions and questions about capitalism and somehow people throwing their bodies and intellects and whatever they're throwing at to defend it. But, if we're honest, sometimes we don't even quite understand what capitalism is. But maybe we'll get to that today. Any other clarifying questions before we go on to our next panelists? Okay. Great. All right. Oh, Safo, go ahead.
So, Tafari asked the question as well. Do we want to cover that one now as well? Or do we want to wait until and come back around to this one? So the question is, what does intercommunalism say about the consolidation of the African nation for self-determination, which was Marcus Garvey's mission?
So intercommunalism is essentially like a good theory as African people around the globe are facing globalization, right? So it's this whole idea that the capitalist blocks actually transcend borders, right? And so I think what Huey P. Newton was trying to get us to realize is that we also need to start seeing ourselves not as, Africans in America or Africans over here. We really need to see ourselves just as one single community, right? And within those communities, we create our own autonomous systems of wielding political power, our own ways of distributing resources amongst each other, and how to be in solidarity with other communities that might not be within our own within our own nation state borders, right? So I'm not too sure if intercommunalism is really all about the consolidation, right, of African nationhood. I do kind of subscribe, to a bit of anarchist ways of thinking. And one of the things that Huey P. Newton actually said is that within intercommunalism is that it paves a way to what he calls pure communism and pure anarchy, which is not like in the crazy sense that what we see, but that there is absolute shared power between human beings, right? So instead of having an authority power to be centered upwards, it is actually it shifts more horizontally. So that I'm not too sure if that directly answers what he says there, but it's really all about how can you build up where you are democratically, and then how can you be in solidarity with other communities within national borders? So it's like what the capitalists are doing at the top, we got to do down here below, right? So like hoods in Cincinnati, hoods in Chicago, how do they link up and link up with like hoods in the Gaza Strip? So it's like stuff like that.
All right, thank you. So we'll go with Brother Diallo to give his closing statement on this topic with tying in one of the questions.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the invite. Basically, I'm going to stick with the Black capitalism is not a path to Black liberation, because capitalism makes a lot of false assumptions about the human mentality and human capacities. It basically promotes the illusion that without the ability to amass and to hoard resources, people won't be motivated to work, and the best and brilliant of the society will not be willing to make contributions to the world. They will hold back their invention. Mark Zuckerberg wouldn't give us Facebook, or Elon Musk wouldn't have invented Tesla without the incentive of being able to amass billions of dollars, and which directly deprives many other people from the capacity to live dignified lives. So capitalism is based on a lie. It's based on a warped sense of the human behavior. It's based on warping natural human evolutionary positions, basically the human mentality and the human personality, specifically those of African people. So even if African people fully mastered capitalism in its purest sense, because then you also have the capitalist ideas, the capitalist rhetorics versus capitalist praxis or practices. So even if we mastered capitalism, we would have to establish a hierarchical, compounding, oppressive system in order to sustain capitalism. So even capitalism is anti-liberation. Capitalism is basically a reworking of what is called the divine right of kings. Prior to the mercantile uprising or the merchant class overthrowing the monarchs, people's ability or their right to hoard wealth was based on their birthright. And the merchant classes, or the middle class of the early industrial period, basically turned that to say, well, you don't inherit blood from your bloodline in order to justify your rule and wealth. You inherit money or gold or property. And most of that is based on documents, because most of the capitalists, the true capitalists like Bill Gates being the largest farmland owner in the world, capitalists can never fully work or control what they own. They can't, oversee what they own. Bezos can't oversee the delivery of packages. Trump, who's a builder, real estate, and owns towers, doesn't know how to build towers. He doesn't know how to do electricity or drywall or mason work. So basically, capitalism is justified theft, just like the monarchy is justified theft enforced by policemen, soldiers, knights of the round table. It's the same goddamn hustle. It's the same rationale, except you lose inherited bloodline wealth and versus inherited monetary wealth and property. And it's all based on make-believe. Instead of having the blood of the king in my veins, I now have pieces of paper that says I own the deed, or I own the copyright, or I own the patent of shit I didn't even make. So you can't base human liberation on make-believe, and it's also based on a warping or falsehoods of the mentality. And I mean, I always say it's a point of pride that Africa, the African continent, and African people in general have so magnificently failed at capitalism at every turn. Whether we go back to Booker T. Washington era or the secure the bag, hustle, grind culture of today. We love, or as Claude Anderson, who flirts too much with capital for my liking, he said, we play to play, we don't play to win. We don't really have the capacity to be capitalists, to colonize, enslave, rape ecosystems to utter oblivion. So we can't use capitalism for liberation, because capitalism inherently requires oppression and hyper exploitation. So even if we can use capitalism to amass wealth and destroy ecosystems, if we do capitalism, it'll turn out just like when white folks and everyone else, or Chinese or India, every other place that does capitalism. It's not about freedom. It's more repression for the masses and a gross accumulation for the few.
So
you hold that phone up on me, man. You keep trying to slap me in the face with that damn phone.
My bad, bro. I didn't mean to chop you in your head. But listen,
you like that, bam.
Hey,
I appreciate it. I like order.
Listen. I don't know if you
orderly
have
anarchist.
Hey, you had somebody clapping for you and saying they love Dr. Anderson at the same time. So I don't know.
Well,
Y'all,
I wish
y'all,
Dr. Anderson loved himself as much as you love him, Kalonji, because Dr. Anderson be playing himself.
hey, y'all might be fighting at the end of the night if you talk
Dr.
too bad.
Anderson, I recommend he read his own damn books.
Hey,
exactly.
hey,
Number one, and number two, you know, the prescriptions that Dr. Anderson is offering for Black people don't even work when he was trying to apply it to his own entrepreneurial pursuits. So
he wanted us all to eat fried fish and wear leather hats. We aren't gonna get free like that.
Hey, Diallo, I want to get this one in for a clarifying question. I'm not sure if the Queen, right? You just said something about a king. I don't know if the Queen is asking this question, but I always see it, and it always kind of makes me feel some type of way. But she said we keep having these conversations. What institutions are being formed as a model? So it sounds like one of those. Again, I don't know if this is what she's saying, or he or she. I don't know. But it sounds like all this damn talking was the institution. Let's get to work. Can you respond to this statement?
In terms of what should I speak to?
I mean,
happy to hear the discussions on international struggles that are being included in our strategy. We keep having discussions, though. What institutions are being formed as a model? Okay. Well, the problem with institutions and Black people requiring institutions or even engaging in statecraft, that's a bit putting the cart before the horse. Oppressed, enslaved people can't really construct institutions. We really have to rest on ideology and rest on strategies and tactics. But any institutions that we build either become corrupted or eroded from the inside out because we have not yet internalized a revolutionary or a Pan-Africanist ideology. So we put the cart before the horse, and I understand our motivations to do that. After decolonization, Africans were quickly to adopt anthems and to make flags and to, you know, claim their nationality, but they were still under the military vulnerability and economically dependent on their former colonial powers. So really, even though I study statecraft, I want to engage in statecraft, but you can't make revolution without revolutionaries. And in order to have enough revolutionaries to make sustainable institutions, we have to revolutionize our culture and our people. And we haven't done the work enough to really make revolutions. So in reality, just like if we observed on the African continent in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s, you could give African people all the resources. You could give them a building, you can give them grants, you could give them libraries, you could give them titles, and you can give them all the resources. And it ends up like the HBCUs. It ends up like the NAACP. So as opposed to lamenting the lack of resources, we have to consolidate and cultivate and radicalize our people to the degree that we have enough revolutionaries to build on that. But beyond that, organizations and movements are always forming, are always developing, always contributing to the larger struggle. As one sister here is a member of the Uhuru movement, we got the movement of the people in Nigeria, the economic freedom fighters. There are movements and organizations everywhere. But before those movements and organizations can become institutions, which is an intersection of not just ideas, but ideas that are fed by resources that secure territory, that is able to replicate and reproduce itself within the environment that it finds itself in. So I'm sorry that you don't have institutions, but there are plenty of organizations and movements for you to be a part of.
That's good. So one more before we go to the second half. So John is throwing an LOL in this question, which means he's gonna kind of be heavy in defense of capitalism today. But how do we prevent the new order from looking like the new order? I guess he meant old order. Make sure the pigs don't take over the farm, so to speak. So I feel the question is like, okay, I'm being dominated in this space. This domination is comfortable. How can we make sure that we're not dominated again? That's how I took it, but I'm not sure.
Well, first of all, you have to deny them the tools and the means to do that. So if you create a new If you create a new system that allows for the ownership of private property, for the accumulation and hoarding of wealth, then you create a situation for pigs to thrive. So the only thing you have to do, and I hate to quote Donald Trump, he didn't come up with this, but he owns it now. You have to drain the swamp. And the concept of draining swamp means you don't create the environment for such creatures to thrive. So if you don't have any slop, then you can't feed pigs, and pigs will either go away or die off. So what you have to do is incentivize and reward and support humane behaviors and humane production and humane ecological distribution, and at the same time disincentivize greed, accumulation. There were always greedy people amongst the people of the pre-capitalist, pre-colonial Asia, Africa, Native America. There's a really good book called Cows, Pigs, and Witches that talk about pre-capitalist and even pre-monetary societies and how they discouraged greed and how greed was looked at as a severe mental illness. And they would do everything from shunning to executions when these societies, or as Marx called them, primitive capitalist communists, would encounter people with warped senses of value and warped senses of ownership, were ostracized. So it's within the physical structures of the society. Just like if you go and work for Coca-Cola, you can hate Coca-Cola, but if you follow the corporate structure, you really can't really go against it. Like, I'm in this society and I'm anti everything in this society, but through the physical structures of the society, there's only so much I can do while still being a full a member of society. So we have to create structures that discourage pig behavior and encourage humane and ecological behaviors and it's embedded in the day-to-day behaviors of the society and the system.
Thank you. I just
want to point out that John's reference to pigs taking over the farm was a reference to George Orwell's book Animal Farm. Just real quick point about let's not use Orwell to criticize socialism.
Punk ass, he was a snitch.
Well, George Orwell was a socialist, and many people use Orwell's work to criticize socialism. When George Orwell himself was a socialist, he wasn't criticizing socialism, he was criticizing Stalinism. So I just want to make that distinction. Yeah.
I can't hear you, Geechee. You're muted.
You're on mute.
My bad. I pulled a Diallo and Sapo just now. I said, for the people just coming in, thank you for coming in. You're coming in at the end of the opening, closing statements by each panelist. And now we're going to get to some of the questions by the other panelists with each other. And then me and Asaf are going to have questions. And also we're going to take questions in. And if there are any challenges on what was said, please bring those into the comment section so we can have the dialogue around it. I recommend that you not get in your feelings. If you make a statement that you don't know much about, it just might not go well with these group of people. I'm just gonna be 100 with you. So know what the hell you're talking about when you come with a question or a statement. Asaf, you got any questions initially for anybody on the panel?
Yeah, I have a few. So my first question would be, I would like, request rather, would be I would like everyone to offer some comments regarding, and this is kind of in response to what Brother Diallo said, something he said in his remarks. So I would like him to begin first. Just your comments on the fervor or the zeal, if you will, around the Tulsa and Black Wall Street and these ideas. I know people will prop up, say like a Tulsa or Black Wall Street. See, this is how we were able to make capitalism work. So what would be your response to that?
Wait. I'm sorry. Let's table that. Let's get Nneka in real quick. Nneka just came back. And then we need everybody to answer that. I think everybody to answer that would be great. I love that one. All right, go ahead, Nneka. So go ahead with your closing statement. You have up to 4 minutes. I'll show you the timer. When you finish, we'll have the clarifying questions, but your closing statement and tie in one of your answers to the questions. Hold on. Oh, my bad. You got to come off mute. Everybody having that mute button. There we go.
So my closing statement would be Black capitalism is not a path for liberation, because you can't be liberated in a system for which you were the first, you and your people were the first capital, right? And so I think where we get confused often is you can participate in capitalism and not be a capitalist. I think that oftentimes we, in our desire, many of us in our desire to acquire power in the system as it, as we understand it, just are seeking to imitate the power structures that we already see without understanding that there are different types of power. Like you have hydroelectric power, you have wind power, you have nuclear power, and capitalism is a nuclear economic power. And we just seek to get that power, not understanding that there are other types of power that are more equitable, more sustainable, more effective in terms of making sure that the people's needs are met. And so I think our big piece is because many of us don't have a basic grasp of African history prior to the colonial period. And I mean both the European colonial period and the Arab colonial period. So we don't think that there's any such notion as African economic systems. And because we don't think that there's any such notion, we subsequently think the only economic system there is to participate in is capitalism. And thus, if we put a Black face on it, then Black capitalism is a path for liberation, without understanding that there are other economic systems that existed, that were cooperative, that were collaborative, that were communal before the European comes into existence, even as a being. And then, even the notion of communism is problematic in my mind, and it's not. Black communism also isn't an answer to our liberation, because communism, again, is just a child, is the angry child of capitalism. It's like the Anglo, oftentimes we get caught up in these Anglo versus Saxon wars, and capitalism versus communism is the same thing. It is, communism just comes out of angst of working class or the proletariat of white folks. And so that too, though it has some positive aspects in it in terms of sharing, in terms of group economics, it is also not an answer. But I think the answer to what we really need to be doing in terms of creating an economic system is to go back and really study pre-colonial Africa and those economic systems using the technologies that were already present, cultural, actual technology in terms of, or not actual technology, but cultural technology, physical technologies, and mechanical technologies in order to create economic systems that are a pathway to our liberation today.
Thank you. So is there any clarifying questions from other panelists or anybody in the comment session about anything that was said? Somebody came off mute just now? Oh, all right. Thank you. All right, so let's get to the question. Wealth under capitalism produced, great point. All right, let's get to that question again, Asafo. I think you directed it at someone, but I would like for you to direct it at that person again, and then let everybody else have a follow up with it.
I want everyone to respond, but I wanted Brother Diallo to respond first regarding the response or the reply that you would get with the critique of capitalism is just not a sustainable way for Black people to build or to or what have you. Well, they'll hold up, say, the Black Wall Street or any number of places throughout the United States where presumably Black folks were able to, build sustainable communities using capitalism. So I just wanted, what would your responses be to that response? Go on.
I think it would be a poor example bordering on the absurd for someone to use. And I find a lot of organizations and individuals draw back to Black Wall Street. The Game named his rap group and his record label Black Wall Street. It was absolutely a failure. But what's most telling about it is, as someone had mentioned, the sister that just spoke about how we don't know our history. We were always wealthier than the people who engaged in conquest over us. So the accumulation of material wealth, of gold or other precious metals, or controlling large swaths of land, having wealth and riches does not secure or defend you. So what is the point? Because only thing you're doing is basically, there was a cartoon my son used to watch. I think it was called Bug's Life, where all the ants would gather up all the resources, and then the grasshoppers would just come snatch that shit. So if you have Black people who are engaged in Black Wall Street, which they weren't, because they didn't do Black, because Wall Street was about conquest and colonialism, about mass enslavement. Who did the Black people on Wall Street? What territory did they control? What military did they control? Who did they enslave to do their work? And so Black people working jobs and earning some incomes and making some sensible purchases with that income and living with relative comfort. It's not capitalism. We don't owe any of our comforts to capitalism. The masses of the people have everything we have in spite of capitalism. So I think it's absurdist. It's really stupid, because going all the way back for the first Arab hordes that invaded North Africa, to the European sick-infested syphilitic invaders to Central and Southern Africa, we were always wealthier than the people who colonized us. So simply accumulating wealth, whether as we define it or as our oppressors define it, has never been a defense against European aggression, has never secured us from conquest. It takes more than just accumulating might. I mean, the colonizer's not going to run up on you and be like, damn, you got a Maserati, a degree, and 6 properties. I guess I can't bash your skull in then. I mean, I just think it's a form of escapism. I think it's a form of, I think at this point, Black Wall Street, when it should be a source of outrage, it should be a rally point for Black revolutionary struggle. But now the fact that it has been perverted into a fanciful fantasy about Black accumulation and communism, to me, it's on a level of like old John Henry, or it's on the level of Rosa Parks, who was a plant when we had poor and working class Black women sitting on the front of buses and going to jail, and the NAACP didn't want single mothers or poor inarticulate Black women representing the struggle. So they went and got an articulate, educated employee. And it's folklore, it's myth, it's empty fantasy. It's a dead end street for Black people and Black liberation. But I don't like to get in the way, because they call me the Grinch of Pan-Africanism and call me a hater. So I let people have their Black Wall Street fantasies and delusions, or Rosewood fantasies and delusions. But it really speaks to really, it should belong to the revolutionary socialists. It should belong, the story and the lesson of Black Wall Street should be owned and controlled and articulated by the Black revolutionary left, because it better gives legitimacy to what we advocate for: liberation and anti-capitalism, as opposed to wealth accumulation and integration. But we let them have it. They took it, they run with it, and it's theirs, which was a mistake.
So before anybody else go, I think some people probably got offended. So you trying to tell me Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and a WAP coin ain't gonna help us with liberation?
No, Bitcoin. Well, you see now that the whole selling point of Bitcoin was that it was an unregulated, decentralized currency. But when they saw that it was an unregulated, decentralized currency, people like Elon Musk and other wealthy people were able to more easily manipulate the cost. And so you literally had a episode of Saturday Night Live cause a massive collapse of Dogecoin. And so now they literally, if you go on Google and search, I think it's called Elon coin or Musk coin or Stop Musk coin, they are now the Bitcoin advocate advocates are now appealing to certain states and certain regulatory bodies to regulate cryptocurrency. To regulate cryptocurrency because it's too easily manipulated. So the basic selling point where the Black liberationists, the crypto liberation is saying it's untrackable, it's decentralized, it's unregulated. Now it's being integrated into the larger economic system, and it's having the same impact. I mean, Black people, there's really no shortcut to liberation. And every few seasons, they were telling us before cryptocurrency that if we learn the code, and they were telling us if we learn agriculture, every generation has its shortcut to freedom and symbols of Black power that they sell to the masses, and own our own record labels or amass Dogecoin. But really, unless we dismantle white hegemony, U.S. military, and Western military nuclear weapon domination and abolish capitalism and capitalist infrastructure, there is no liberation with those systems still existing around the world, regardless of whether you are able to amass fiat or you live in check by check. And I also, you start to see now, a lot of the more intelligent Bitcoin advocates, liberationists, are now just focusing on blockchain technology as opposed to the various cryptocurrencies. And I think there's about 6,000 cryptocurrencies. I mean, we could go create an anti-cryptocurrency tomorrow. So now they're trying to say, well, it's not necessarily the crypto, it's the blockchain technology. And so they're going to keep morphing and spinning it. But it's like every other pyramid scheme. The people at the top going to snatch the bag and run and leave everybody else struggling and waiting for the next Ponzi scheme to hit the streets.
Yeah. Safo, want to bring the question back? I know Diallo probably smashed that question, but anybody else want to add to that?
Safo, can you repeat the question again?
Yes. So the question was just respond to this idea that people will when we talk about a critique of capitalism, people will prop up or hold up Black Wall Street or Rosewood or any of the others as we were able to make capitalism work for us. So what would be your response to that?
I would say that, well, first of all, seeing as that Black Wall Street does not exist today, it obviously didn't work. And so for one, I think because that is something that comes up all the time and it's so simple. I agree with most of the stuff that Brother Diallo mentioned. Capitalism cannot work for Black people. And in terms of Black Wall Street, one, I think it's important. I think that Black Wall Street, if we just raise up Black Wall Street and try to find our niche under capitalism, we leave out the class question, which is extremely important when we talk about liberation of African people and why Black capitalism doesn't work, because it doesn't say anything about the class question. And always in the struggle of African liberation, the middle class, the African petty bourgeoisie always sabotage the liberation of the masses of the people. And so I think it's important to mention. And so it's not our mission as a revolutionary and a member of the African People's Socialist Party. It's not our mission to create to create African petty bourgeoisie or Black middle class. Our struggle is to end the class question, get rid of all colonial borders, be a self-determining and governing people. And that doesn't mean a very, very small percentage of Black people making it, quote unquote, making it under capitalism. And if Black Wall Street if that's the type of thing that's going to free us, or if that's the type of thing that Black people should be struggling for, I think we have to also look at the question outside of capital, like your own security, your own life. Like those Black business owners of Black Wall Street could have just come up mysteriously missing. Their business could have just been, shut down. They could have done anything. The capitalists, these colonialist capitalists have the power to do anything. They could have done any of those things. However, those people in that area was bombed. And that was to send a message to African people that that if you try to go against capitalism, or if you try to build up your own nation, this is what's going to happen to you. And so, one, I think we have to look at the question of our own security. Like, even if you accumulate however much money or capital under capitalism, at any given point in time, even without stepping outside of your home, you can be gunned down by these police and, that function as like military occupants in a community. And so what does it mean to accumulate all this money when, again, at any given point in time, you can be gunned down by the police and nothing happens? Like absolutely nothing happens. And even then, what does that mean for the rest of the people that can't? Because the masses of the people are the poor working class. They're not the middle class. And so it says nothing about the consolidation of the African nation. Rather, it just makes, allows a few African people to acquire some sort of comfort under capitalism, which means nothing, absolutely nothing for the people and nothing in terms of revolution. And from a strategic revolutionary standpoint, also, why would you surround yourself, your niche? Why would you surround it by the same person that's oppressing you? You're going to set up your own little Black community in the middle of Babylon, in the middle of the U.S. Like, even from like a military standpoint, like you're already defeated. You're surrounded by your colonizer. African people have to fight for Africa, for a class-free socialist or communist Africa, not a space or 5 states or a street or whatever, or a city in under U.S. capitalism. That makes absolutely no sense if we want to get free. Now, if you're talking about just a few people being comfortable, sure, then go for it. But if you're talking about securing your life, the life of your children, and looking at consolidating the whole African nation, a Black Wall Street is not going to do it. Because if it did, we'd be a free people right now.
I would say that I think that the brother brought to mind this piece about we really don't, and the sister did as well, we really don't study. Because if we studied Greenwood, if we studied Rosewood, if we studied St. Augustine, if we studied Baltimore, if we studied all the places that where our folks have been, Galveston, if we want to look at Juneteenth, in what we now call America, what we have a tendency of doing is pointing to things, Black buying power, Greenwood, all these other things, as it's almost like we're criticizing ourselves. Like, look, we messing up again. Because we don't again take the time to really break down the different pieces. So Black Wall Street, setting up a Black Wall Street or setting up one Black community isn't an answer to what we're experiencing right now inside of capitalism, but it does have clues to what we need to be doing and where we messed up in the past, right? We do have that Monday morning quarterback, as they would say. We have the gift of being able to look back at the past and see what has happened. And one of the things that we've never done very well is provide physical security in this context for whatever we amass, whether we do it through a capitalist model, or whether we do it through a communist model, or whether we do it cooperatively and collectively through some other model. We don't tend to have a good notion of security, and that in most of the cases, it's rooted in the idea that for most of us, we have been just trying to be integrated into or accepted into society, whether it's on an economic level, whether it's on a spiritual level or a cultural level. And so we have to look at that piece, because the answers are in all of those things, not just in the elevation of Black Wall Street, because that narrative that, oh, y'all failed to do A, B, and C, or we spend too much money, look at our Black buying power, which, as Dr. Ball kind of broke down really masterfully, is a whole myth. That we end up just pointing a finger at ourselves and, you know, lowering our collective esteem in that regard again, instead of really studying tactically and strategically these particular historical events or theories surrounding economics.
You know, one of the things that I want to say, and I want Prince to go next. I don't know if it's necessarily this concept of failing and succeeding, because I think we all have different definitions of it. But in terms of poverty there, which is recorded, in terms of O.W. Gurley and I think a couple other people who control all of the resources there, and also in terms of most black people in Greenwood work for white people. So you ask the question like, hey, so we want to build another Black Wall Street. Which one of y'all gonna be Gurley? And which white business is all most of us gonna work for? Like, ask that kind of question, and then the conversation get over fast. But go ahead, Prince.
Yeah, there's a really bad thunderstorm, so if you see me kind of jumping, whatever, like a lightning bolt just like struck across my street. So I was like, but anyways, no, you know, to your point, brother Gichi, and as well as to our sister comrade here, you know, we really got to look at you know, the real history, right? Like there was this really good podcast called Black Myths Podcast. And they do a lot of great work trying to get into the histories of Greenwood. And I think anybody should definitely check out that podcast. There's a great scholarship that they do to really highlight, like, one, there wasn't even proper like sewage and infrastructure or whatever within Greenwood. And then two, most of the people who lived in Greenwood actually worked, for white folks, right? But we also have to like really dispel this myth that like somehow capitalism can erase class, the whole idea of class divisions. And I think that the more that we practice capitalism, like what we end up doing is that we kind of create that archetype that we call crabs in the barrel, right? Like where everybody is just, you know, trying to get out, pulling each other down and things like that. Capitalism does that, right? For our people. And even the ways in which aspiring Black middle class people think about poor working class Blacks is as if like these guys are fucking it up for all of us, right? Like you guys need to get yourself together. You got to start pulling your pants up. You guys just need to work hard. And I just don't think like working hard has ever been a problem for Black people, right? I mean, we pick their cotton. We're probably one of the most entrepreneurial class I think that probably ever existed here. I was going to read some data later on in this conversation, you know, around that, how even as we're creating more businesses, our wealth continues to decline anyways. So just want to kind of talk on that. And so I don't know if it's the right time to kind of go into this question here, this whole consumer mentality. I just think is really, I'm trying to be very like critically and as well as compassionate around here. I think.
So let me just.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Let me just ask the question. Put the question up here. Okay. Do you think we can change the consumer mentality that plagues our people? If so, how? So let me just say first off that question leads with a tremendous amount of presumption that, you know, we're just, well, go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Oh, I think you was going to say it, right? Like, I was just going to say, like, I don't think that should be the lens for how we should see Black people, because, you know, in reality, everyone consumes here, right? So that's just, you know, if you can't have consumption here, then, you know, if you can't buy anything, you know, then the whole system collapsed. And we saw what happened, right, during COVID, right? Like, they had to stimulate the economy by giving us back our wealth that we already made for them anyways, in order to have people to start buying again, right? So that whole thing is just not a sustainable lens. I think what Black people should really start seeing themselves as workers, right? They should start seeing themselves as an exploited labor class of people, right? Because these people need us here, right? Because if I was watching Cosmic Slop the other night, and there was the scene where the white capitalists were saying like, well, if Black people are gone, then it's going to fall back on the poor whites, and there'll be revolution by noontime, right? So we're here to absorb the shock and instability of capitalism, right? So every 7 years, there's always a recession. We feel it in the hood first, you know what I mean? And we feel it hard, right? A lot of us in here grew up in the crack era, right? I grew up in the crack era of the hood. It was awful, right? I mean, even my own mother was trying to, you know, make ends meet by having her own bakery shop in our own fucking house, right? So we can't see ourselves as consumers. We have to really start seeing ourselves as an exploited labor class, right? And it's just time to get real at that. Everyone has a consumer mentality, right? And like, in fact, Black people really don't have enough money to spend, and if they do spend on things, it's going to be off of credit, right? So, I mean, like, whatever, like, you know, like, come on, man. Like, we have to stop shaming ourselves. Like our sister comrade was telling us, it's just, we've been through too much, right? But this is what this system does. It blames ourselves for our own situations that we didn't even ask for. And we've done everything for this society. We've given them Reconstruction, right? We did the Civil Rights Act for all these immigrants out here, and they still getting off on us. So come on, like, we don't have to blame ourselves. It's not our fault.
So I know Kundai, you wanted to go, but Asafo, you want to give another question?
Just anyone else who wanted to respond to the question of Black consumers and Black consumption and that supposed mentality. If anyone would like to touch on that as well.
Go ahead, Diallo.
Yeah, in terms of Black consumerism, we make up such a small fraction of the economy. I mean, I have to part ways where the brother was saying that the system needs us. With the advent of the system doesn't really need us anymore, which is why we're under a systemic campaign of genocide. The system does need to preserve its standing in the global arena, so it can't embark on a Nazi-style extermination campaign, and it can't embark on like a Myanmar-style expulsion. So it's doing a sophisticated, systemic, slow genocide of African people. If you see the overall population of African people is declining, and in many of the economic and cultural centers of the United States that used to have a large Black majority, such as Washington, D.C., here in Chicago, in my community of Bronzeville, Los Angeles, many of the urban centers are purging Black people. And they're to the point where some Black people are trying to spin this and call it a new great mass migration. Well, what it is basically ethnic cleansing of Black people. So to the extent that we could rely in the industrial periods under industrial capitalism, rest somewhat on the value we hold for the system in terms of our labor, a cheap labor source, and Black people being available to the capitalists to displace white labor when white labor would try to organize. We have that niche we don't have that niche anymore. Even to the point where, and also, you know, I was doing some research showing that many of the cities that are bringing Black people into them, like one of the highest 22% increase in their Black population, Phoenix, Arizona, they're literally writing ecological and environmental assessments saying that cities like Phoenix, Arizona, and other parts of the Deep South will be uninhabitable under global warming and climate change. Those cities will be uninhabitable. And if you look at the cities that are experiencing an influx of Black migrants, and you look at the cities that they are projecting in the regions of the country, they are projecting to be uninhabitable, it's almost one and the same, state by state, city by city. So just the fact that if you are a Black person resting on the fact that you are an asset to the oppressor, even if within less than a full generation, and definitely in less than two, that all these projections go to 2050 and to the end of the century, that one, you know, source of security doesn't exist for us. And in terms of Black people being associated with flashy things, and a lot of Black people talking about, well, you know, which frustrates me, man. You know, if I could fight better than I know how to fight, I'd be clotheslining people all over this city, because every time I leave my house, I see young people wearing Yeezys and Yeezy sliders and those Yeezy shoes. And Kanye West is one of the biggest sellout Uncle Tom backstabbers we didn't produce from my generation. And to see how much loyalty and love we give to those people. But, you know, it's already understood through whether you study B.F. Skinner and his behaviorist techniques, that when you hollow a people out, you know, when you don't give them any type of internal value, they seek to pile on. Amos Wilson also talked about this in great detail. It's not even that in terms of the flashiness and buying the blood diamonds and luxury cars, it's not even to be seen by other Blacks, but more so to be validated by whites. You know, because we could just as easily say, well, you know, who got the flyest cowrie shells, or who got the biggest library, multimedia Pan-African library. Anything can be, and throughout generations, we see anything can be demonstrated to be a thing to make you of status and value. Those things change. So the more hollowed out, the more hopeless, the less revolutionary consciousness, and the fewer viable alternatives we present to our community, many people will fall to conspicuous consumerism. But that is not the source of our problem. That is not why we are oppressed. That conspicuous consumption that you find in certain populations or amongst certain groupings of Black people is a symptom of oppression, not a cause of our oppression, and not something. And if all of us started wearing Skechers, Levi's, and Fruit of the Looms, and no other brand names, if all of that happened tomorrow, there wouldn't be 1 ounce of additional freedom or empowerment or liberation available to us, because that's not the source of the problem. It's the symptom. And it's something that's easy to focus on, because if you focus on Black people poor spending habits, it doesn't put you in direct confrontation with the true oppressors.
Well, that avoiding confrontation is a bug. Go ahead, sis. Kundai.
Yeah, I wanna unite with Brother Diallo, because I think that's raised as always a way of it's that type of narrative blames the people for the conditions, and as Brother Diallo just said, that is not the fundamental question of why Black people experience oppression, or why we are colonized people, because we don't know how to spend our money. That's simply a result of capitalism. It's a symptom of being a colonized people. It's a symptom of being the first commodity. It's a symptom of colonial capitalism. And so and it kind of ties back something else I wanted to go back to was around like institutions, because even if African people put our money together, or again, same thing, create a Black Wall Street, it's still not going to change the oppressive conditions that the vast majority of African people are faced with. And so, but however, one thing that we do have to learn how to start doing is, and that's one thing that we should do, is support Black businesses that support the Black community, not which is different from a bunch of Black entrepreneurs that are only about self. And when again, which is not to blame the people, because capitalism, this social system, produces individualism. It pushes you to be an individual as opposed to a community. And so we have to, but what we have to do is really start looking at, if we're calling on like black business owners, always like, black people have to, support this business, but what is your business doing for the Black community? Is it just funding one family, your family, or is it something that the community is benefiting from? So when I think that's something that we have to look at, to one, if there are people, if there are current Black business owners watching, or if there are people that would like to become like some sort of Black entrepreneur or something to that effect, your business has to contribute to the Black community, especially if you call on the Black community to support you, which is why I think the question of institutions that was raised earlier is important, because we do need Black institutions, or like in our movement, in the Uhuru movement, like Black power institutions. And I really want to salute our deputy chair, Ona Zeneya Shatella, and for the building of our Buy Black Power campaign, because all the time we see like hashtag buy black or that kind of thing, but we've taken it past the question of just buying black and we say buy Black Power. And the difference in that is, again, funding supporting Black businesses that support the Black community. And so to be in the Buy Black Power campaign, your Black business, there's a process of being a part of the campaign. And again, every business can't just join in, but again, have to see a way that your business is supporting the Black community. And our institutions, and I want to say institutions are extremely important even under capitalism, because we have to learn how to do these things. Again, revolution is not a single event that happens and then boom, we pop up in communism, or even boom, we pop up in socialism. Revolution is a process. It's a protracted struggle. It's not something that just happens in one day, or even something that happens in a year of physical combat or war. It's a protracted struggle that has to start now. The decolonizing of the mind, what we call dual and contending power. So we create these economic institutions, which our movement, the history of our movement, we have over 50 economic institutions and projects. And these are important because as Black people, we have to learn how to manage these kind of things, because even when we defeat colonial capitalism, we still have to learn how to function or learn how to maintain institutions, because people still going to need to go to the grocery store. As much as I love to be out there, and as many community gardens and farms that we build, everybody's not going to be on the farm. Everybody is not going to be out with a tiller and a hoe and a tractor, and everybody is not going to be teachers. Everybody is not going to be people are still going to wear clothes, and that doesn't mean how people will dress was going to reflect what we do under capitalism, but all those things will still have to be produced initially, again, as we transition to communism. And so the institutions are important for us to learn this. We look at Che Guevara, who's always raised up, and we raise up Che Guevara all the time. However, one of the shortcomings and contradictions was not knowing how to run the banks. And so then what happens? So you have revolution and you try to push socialism, but then you fall right back in the hands of capitalism because you don't know how to run institutions. So having institutions, learning how to build institutions and maintain them is extremely important, although they won't be maintained in the same way outside of capitalism. And even though we function under capitalism now, it's still important to learn those things. So that way, again, in the revolution, we can continue life for ourselves. Because we create all the work, but we don't own it, and so we don't have any say in how it goes or where the money goes. I hope that made sense.
Absolutely.
No, that was just fine. I wanted to ask everyone else about this broader idea of entrepreneurship under the guise of under the furtherance of a socialist ideology versus under the furtherance or embracing a capitalist ideology, or if anyone of the panel would see a contradiction between embracing entrepreneurship and then rejecting capitalism, if anyone would even see that as a contradiction.
So
but let me real quick, I want to go back to Kundai if she can come back on. I wanted to ask her really quickly. The point you made about Buy Black Power, supporting Black businesses that help the community, that support the community. What are the standards for that? Because you can have your Black, grade garden variety Black capitalists come up and say, well, I give out turkeys during Thanksgiving, so I give back to my community, so you all need to support me. So what standards would you suggest?
I can't list all of it because this is a legitimate campaign that like literally you can go to now and put your business in and be a part of. That's not directly under the department in the Uhuru movement that I work under, but I'm sitting in one of our economic institutions right now, Zinsley Consignment, and so as the assistant manager, and so obviously our store is a part of that campaign also since in our movement. But what I can say some things off the top of my head that I know is because there's a full list. There's what we call them points of unity that people, if they're going to sign up and be a part of the Buy Black Power campaign, they have to sign and agree with these points of unity that we've laid out, that our movement has laid out. And so like for instance, gentrification, that's something that it's that has to be talked about, because you can be a Black business and your Black business might support gentrification, because where you might want to put your shop might have been a project housing 2 weeks ago that just got tore down. And so, but you want to put your business downtown, uptown, or where I live in Huntsville, Alabama, and down in South Parkway or downtown Huntsville. That's a problem. That's a problem, because that means that your business is supporting gentrification. And in most cases, you know that, because you can't tear down a whole community, a whole project, and not know. I would be a little bit concerned at how you running a whole business and don't know that this is a whole community a week ago. But so like not supporting gentrification, making sure that your business is clear on that. Your business is something that uplifts the community and is not something that tears down the community. Like we have these petty merchants that sell the worst type of food and drinks in the community, stuff that they themselves don't even eat. You got Muslims selling pork jerk, whatever the jerk stuff, whatever the stuff is that, you know, they sell in little corner stores and gas stations, and you don't even eat that. But you're gonna pop up and sell it in the Black community. And so but it's the same thing. I mean, there's Black owned like little corner shops and stuff like, and things like that do absolutely nothing for our people, and in fact do the opposite of what we try to do with our health. That's a contradiction. It has to be looked at. The business, I think those are some key things that I see a lot in terms of people that ask me about their business. And in particular, sometimes they can do like where their business, some of their profit can go to support one of our projects or things like that, like Zinsley Consignment, right? So we sell African clothing, which while, you know, may help to raise cultural awareness, clothes, you know, we could be selling anything, because clothes is not going to change, is not going to liberate us. Selling every African person having on a dashiki is not going to liberate us, right? But what the store does is, one, it's a cultural and political hub for the community. So it's a place that the community can come in and have discussions that they can't have anywhere else in the city, where it's, oh, you can't talk about that, or you can't talk about this, or can't say this about this person. Nobody can come into Zinsley Consignment and tell the Black community what they can and cannot talk about. And so it offers the place, again, a cultural and political hub that's not seen, that's not anywhere else in this city. You got to go to Birmingham or Atlanta or Nashville or something to have something like this. And then also, we fund, our store was established, even outside of that, it was established to fund our community gardens, was established to fund our Marcus Garvey youth program, our local Marcus Garvey youth program. So the store is like a regular resource. And so it funds those kind of things. Some Black businesses may fund another type of Black school or something in their community, while their actual products may not directly benefit the liberation of African people, but what their resources go to can do that.
Sister Nneka, did you want to opine as well?
Opine, I love it. So one of the things I wanted to go back to was the notion of our conspicuous consumerism. I think that one of the things that if you look at the history of our people, again, if you go back to the golden era in West Africa, this is how, like, the way we show up, the way we express ourselves through clothing, through hair, through dance, through song, through all of these things. These are a part of our ritual and spiritual practice, and it is a part of the way that we affirm our humanity. Now, unfortunately, because of our experience here, some of that behavior has morphed into things that are pathological, right? Or are just, not good, that don't edify us. But I think that it's key for us to remember that the root of these things, right? We need to go back to the actual root of these things and make sure that the things that we are, judging or critiquing the community on don't have some root in our spiritual and cultural practice. And where they don't, we can throw it away. And that we can do the healing work necessary to get ourselves back into the right thinking. But where they do have root in our cultural or spiritual practice, that we need to go and make a delineation between them. And so a quick example is, when people are murdered in Baltimore and elsewhere in our neighborhoods, people set up street shrines with all the liquor that they drink and with the candles and the balloons and all of that. That is no different then how we set up ancestral shrines if you are a practitioner of, you know, any of the ATARs, right? Any of the African traditional religions. So the note is to not say, hey, that you shouldn't do that in the street, y'all shouldn't have those gang colors up, is to explain to our people that this is the practice and this is how we got to this place, right? And that also goes to the notion of institution building, because one of the reasons why we don't understand the ritual power of dress, the ritual power of venerating our ancestors, is because our institutions are functioning out of order, if they're functioning at all. And so we have to get into the notion of writing our institutional development, right? And meaning that we have created many institutions, and unfortunately, many of those institutions have creeped away from their original liberatory or, you know, freedom-seeking missions. And we have to bring those institutions, or bring any institutions that we're developing now. We have to make sure that we are not allowing that, what they call scope creep, to occur. Like we have to have those things. We have to have those institutions. And to the sister's point about, you know, entrepreneurship, what is the point of making money? We have to dispel this notion about, oh, we making money, we getting money as an individual entrepreneur, but our staff, our record label, and our crew, aka our community, isn't benefiting from it. No, that's not how it works. We have to be both producer and consumer of products and services in a way that allows us to continue and strengthen our connection with community. And if we're not doing that, then it doesn't matter how many, you know, I'm using McDonald's as a bad example, but how many McDonald's are open, right? Because, you know, that food isn't good for us anyway, right? Or how many chicken spots are open if you're not getting your potatoes from the community garden, or if you're not getting your chickens from the people who got their little, you know, couple little chicken coops. Even if you only, you know, your eggs or whatever it is, we have to make sure that we're doing business with each other in ways that fuels the community and makes it possible for us to create more producers of the products and services that we need, so that we can consume in a circle.
Love it, love it. So we're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes. Make sure you get any final questions in. Thank you for tuning in. We had a good bit of people rocking with us the whole time. We're going to get some final questions from the people, and then each panelist is going to be able to drive home a point or a statement best, especially after having this dialogue and new things coming at. I don't know, is there a word, right? We know there's cognitive dissonance. If there's a word that does not shut down it, but takes a long time and hold on to little things as it get new information. I don't know if that's a word, but whatever that is, you know, we have people like this brother here. I'm calling him up because he did this 2 times. But he says that we're making money just to spend it on Mercedes-Benz or whatever. And he also said, yes, it's not the problem, but we still can spend better to help out. Like, there's a lot of words and language that's draped in non-confrontational rhetoric, right? At the end of the day, it's always like, instead of punch the man who's taking money out your house, figure out something else. You know, maybe we should stop eating so much sugar. And that
do we really spend money? I mean, 40% of the people in Baltimore don't even have a car. So with respect, like if I'm talking about my city, you know, where I'm at, 40% of our folks don't even have a vehicle. So, and at the point, if you're 40 or 50 years old and you're getting your first vehicle and you so choose to go buy a Mercedes-Benz, like where's the smoke? I mean, I'm being honest. Where's the smoke for that? Like, I don't get it. But I think this notion that we out here just wilding is, you know, just like everybody think that everybody who's selling dope on the corner got stacks and racks, and that ain't the case. It's like, where did you get that from?
Go ahead, Prince and Diallo. I know both of y'all want to go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm not a big fan of entrepreneurship, but if one were to actually go ahead and have the Black business, I think that what needs to happen then is that they have to be paid a living wage, right? That's my middle ground here, and at least here in my city, Cincinnati, they're raising up this banner around Black capitalism, which I really think is just there to keep us away from wielding our political power, which is the only thing that has sustained Black people since we've been here, right? Even Martin Luther King said it himself, right? That no matter how hard or how well we circulate our dollars, that's not going to change the systemic ways of, like Brother Diallo was saying, of the slow economic genocide, or the genocide of our people, right? But I think it's really important that we have to have a really firm assessment as to exactly where we are and how we exist within capitalist regimes, right? There is a noose around us, right? And like what Frantz Fanon says is that, we can no longer breathe, right? And that's what's happening economically. So I think that we have to start really exploring what Black cooperatives are. I think we should definitely be looking back to how Blacks in Alabama were organizing around cooperatives with the Communist Party during that time. And I think that we also have to really kind of push pressure, right? It's time to engage in a political war, to be honest, right? Like beyond Democrat and Republicans, I think what the Ujima Party is doing out there in Baltimore or out there in Maryland, I think that's something that we should really consider and really get behind, like stuff like that, right? Because throughout COVID, right, they claim to be giving out, all these loans and support for Black businesses or whatever. But, none of that actually went to providing subsidies so that Black businesses can pay their employees a minimum wage, right? So it's just those things that we got to get real about. Me personally, I would like to see more blown cooperatives everywhere. We got so many sisters out here selling shea butter. It'll just be really kind of great if all the sisters really kind of came together, did their own cooperatives around shea butter stuff. And somehow they can figure out a way in which, they take part of those profits to help create more cooperatives, right? So there's just so many great models out there. And the tradition of our resistance and abolition is extremely creative. And I think what Black capitalism does is that it keeps us away from that. So we end up blaming ourselves. We create these crabs in the barrel mentality. And, it just doesn't get us anywhere. In my last point here, Dr. Ball was on this research project that actually showed that, like, even with the increase of Black entrepreneurship, there was over I think 20 or 2 million jobs or whatever that was created from like 1993 to 2012. And even though there was a massive expansion of these things, right, Black revenue still continue to fall. So we have to really look at what our ideas of our people, what they had to say about how capitalism extracts our wealth and our labor. And it's just time to fight back in our cities. Like it's just time for a political war. So that's just it.
Go ahead, Diallo.
First, I just want to express my hatred for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurialism. And I really resent how we have this distorted view. An entrepreneur is literally a parasite. And they've been telling us this for generations. Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company and the maker and the so-called inventor of the industrial production process, stated that he hated having to hire a man when he only needed two hands. Workers are nothing but tools. They are nothing but assets. They fucking call us human resources. No entrepreneur can succeed without that mentality. Many of the businesses tell us, many of these true, honest entrepreneurs will say, I'm not in the business of making cars. I'm in the business of making profit. I'm not in the business of building homes. I'm in the business of building profits. And that's when you see so many entrepreneurs, they have multiple streams of income. They'll do anything that allows them to amass fiat currency. And we should hate those people. We should reject that mentality, and we should stop mimicking these insane motherfuckers that are doing this, because that's literally psychopath. That's psychopathic behavior. They are psychopaths. Even white folks are starting to realize that a high number of psychopaths, or a high number of CEOs and high earning individuals, let me talk like Kevin Samuels, stupid ass, or the high value men, are literally have psychopathic mentalities and tendencies. Our goal in terms of the economy should be redistribution of resources and subversion of the system, not accumulation and hoarding of money or any material good. And I hate how this entrepreneurship has infected the revolutionary struggle. You shouldn't strive to be an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur is simply a parasite that seeks to consume and hoard and accumulate resources. You can be a painter. You can be a farmer. All farmers are not entrepreneurs. All artists are not entrepreneurs. All laborers are not entrepreneurs. Your goal should be to pursue your interest, to commit your time, talent, and resources to the positive aspirations of your community, to be a fucking human being, to be humane. Your goal should not to be to either have a skill that you already have, or to go out and develop a skill simply to enter the marketplace to exchange that for fiat, for life coupons called dollars. And we really need to, and like I said, the fact that we've been in this shit from Garvey to Booker T. Washington to Nipsey Hussle. We've had these entrepreneurial ideas about how we can demonstrate to white people our capacity and our willingness to participate as equals in their system, or demonstrate the fact that we can secure the bag. And every time it has collapsed and fell out. Even when we win, we lose. If we succeed in capitalism, the only thing black people are going to do is be greater contributors to the utter destruction of the Earth's ecosystem. Right now, we're living on a planet that is losing its capacity to sustain complex life forms. And the reason that it's losing its capacity to sustain complex life forms is because of the economic production system and the accumulation and hoarding of limited resources by a small number of psychopaths. And we are seeking to mimic these motherfuckers instead of unseat them, to eliminate them, to displace them, to expose, isolate, and expel them from the human family. What the fuck? You know? So my suggestion is that you see yourself, whether you want to start a business. And another thing that we need to start chanting: profit is theft. Profit is theft. Anybody earning profit in our community is a parasite, and they are exploiting the labor of others. You should make earnings. Earnings are things that you have worked for, that you have done service to secure, that you have done something that other people value and want to share with you what they have in exchange for what you have. That is earnings. Profit is things you didn't earn. Profit is what you do when you're sitting on your ass and someone else is working. So if I'm sitting here and I own Amazon stock, I don't have to move or do any type of effort, but I get money from other people out here in the streets, exposed to COVID, driving up and down these dangerous streets, being robbed, being exposed to dogs, being exposed to higher chances of automobile accident. Profit is theft. Any black person that is bragging about, celebrating, or advocating for the generation of profit is advocating for parasitism and exploitation. We, as far as cooperatives, I'm fine, but our ultimate goal should be to subvert the systems and institution of white hegemony. If you own a business, you have to ask yourself, how do I operate this business and conduct this business in a way that subverts the status quo? If you work a job, how do you operate and work at your job to subvert the status quo? If you own some property, if you inherit some money, how do you utilize? And that doesn't mean you can't take your ass, if you're into that, to go to the beach, to go to the strip club, to go to Lollapalooza, whatever the fuck you're into, that is, if you are making positive contributions to the just aspiration of African people, then your own self-care or the ways you relax or rejuvenate yourself are investments in our liberation. So I'm not even saying you can't do all the stuff you're into or do the stuff you get off on, but you still have to, the bottom line, a positive contribution to our just aspirations and subversion of the status quo, mainly white hegemony and capitalism. And fuck entrepreneurialism. And I'm sick of all these people running around telling black folks about entrepreneurialism. Why not just throw some weapons in the room and have them hack each other to bits and then give them, whoever comes walking out, no matter how psychologically damaged they are, they get the bag of gold. That's what entrepreneurialism is. We can't fucking make this shit black or make it work for us. It don't even work for white people.
I love it. Real quick.
Entrepreneurialism is an African-centered Belko experiment.
It's ultra-manurialism, a whole bunch of shit.
Hey, well, hold on. Let me see something. So entrepreneurs are, in its essence, disruptive to a space. And I love the way that you said that if you do have a business, that shit should disrupt white hegemony. So do we have a phrase, I don't have phrases today. Do we have a phrase that tells us that I'm building a business or a co-op or whatever to confront white hegemony? And then if we can think of that phrase, that would be great. And then I want us to finish with Kwesi's question. But is there a phrase to say that I'm creating something to attack white hegemony? I'm not creating something to disrupt a market so I can put Pizza Hut out of business or the shea butter out of business. I got my shea butter is extra wet. I got the moist shea butter. So is there a word that says that what I'm creating is attacking the system? Or disrupting the system, disrupting domination or something. I don't know.
Well, I think, I'm sorry. Go on. No. Oh, sorry. Well, I think that that when you do, I think that the orientation should be towards service and enrichment. So it's about creating a service. If you're not an entrepreneur, if you're setting something up to be of service to others, entrepreneurs are all about extraction. They're not about contribution. So this whole businesses thing, there was a time where there were no businesses. You had craftsmen and you had guilds who would say, well, these are the warrior guilds. These are the blacksmiths. These are the fishermen. These are the agriculturalists. These are the herdsmen. These are the griots. These are the scholars. These are the midwives. And there was no industry of midwifery. There was no business of griots. They simply would find what their passionate interests were and then use that passionate interest to enrich and give purpose to their lives, as well as to contribute to the lives of people around it. And your currency wasn't money. Currency was the honor that you had. We even had hierarchies in society, like this is the master builder who mentors all the other builders. This is the master griot who holds all of our most sacred stories. This is the master midwife. They would even elevate people. And the master midwife doesn't mean like under capitalism, because you're the top midwife, you get to breathe clean air while everyone else has to live in polluted area of town. You get to eat fresh food while everyone else has to eat processed and contaminated food. You get to have 50 residences all spread around the territory while we got homeless people in the streets. And I remember even when I was in the university, they talked about there was a Nigerian professor that talked about pre-colonial Africa, and what would determine the monarchy or a high status person was the certain colors and stitches they would wear. And the white students at the University of Missouri were like, in Kansas City, were like, stitches and colors to determine who's a person of high cultivated skill and a person of low and a noob or a neophyte. It's like anybody could just wear colors. And the professor was like, yeah, but why would you if that didn't represent? So we were literally finding ways to show honor and appreciation. Jordan can dunk a ball like I could never imagine dunking a ball like Jordan, but why the fuck do his children get to have a longer lifespan than my children because he can duck a fucking ball. Give him, you know, a proper embroidery stitch on his fucking hem and let him eat and live like every other human. Instead of giving him $1 billion in yachts, let him have a rowboat, and maybe, you know, we'll get together and paint his house once a month to show our appreciation. So entrepreneurialism is some fucking bullshit. And everywhere I go in the last few years, early in the struggle, when I joined the liberation struggle, entrepreneurs were not even a part of the struggle. They were identified as the enemies, as the class and ideological enemies of black people who wanted liberation. And now we got these motherfuckers leading the movement. And the people talking about economic liberation. What? And even though we saw in Nazi Germany, Jews marching to the cattle cars in fur coats and diamonds with gold sewed into the hem of their garments. Money ain't gonna save us from these Urugus. I don't want to get you demonetized, man, but goddamn.
Hey, no, so in our think tank, we've been talking about this concept of like these nation builders who always have a business to come. And it's kind of like, well, how can you support us? Well, you can buy these, you know what I mean? Like, or you can, and so that's very interesting. I know that's probably gonna make a lot of people pissed.
Oh, just a quick point on demonetization. For what it's worth, we ain't getting no damn money anyway. So
okay. And fuck, yeah. And like, and if you're a black business owner, go get white folks money. Yeah, and bring it back here instead of trying to guilt and coerce black people with consuming your substandard services. Go take your ass to the white community. That's what I did. I opened a business in Kansas City, Missouri, and I opened a vegan, 100% vegan restaurant. And 85% of my customers were white folks. And I was bringing money back to the hood and supporting the hood with white folks' money. Well, I'm gonna go to black people. You ain't supporting me. You claim you ain't real. What? That's guilting black people and then talking about circulating and bouncing the dollar in the hood. All I'm saying is, we did not come under oppression because we weren't good at business, and we will not get out. It's a Claude Anderson again. If it took forward motion to get you in, it takes backward motion. You can't just rev the car faster and keep going forward. We have to go the other way. We have to go another way. Business is not going to liberate us. Business didn't even free white folks. What business did white people start when they to take over this land? To colonize the world. What business did white folks start to they used businesses to manage what they stole, but they didn't use businesses to take it. They didn't come out here and out entrepreneur the Native Americans. They didn't come out compete our ancestors on the shores of Africa. They came with brute barbaric strength. And they think we're going to overcome barbarism with proper accounting practices and a good advertising and promotion campaign. I just think we should kick the fucking entrepreneurs out of the liberation struggle. I said all of that. That's my bottom line. But I got to sit and watch these thick neck, pack a hot dog neck Negroes, and every time we get together, come there and promote their businesses and talk about, I came from nothing and I'm here and all this nonsense. And they trying to, we got Jay-Z wearing red, black, and green and making conscious music. We playing.
We're going to get comments from Brother Prince and Sister Nneka. She want to make a comment. But I'll just say that, I agree to the extent that, we have to be extremely careful of the entrepreneurs in our midst because, we have a so-called entrepreneur here in Horry County. And, they talk about how, our black youth will be so much better if we teach them how to play golf. But as it turns out, this person is a golf instructor who's going to charge people to, do whatever to teach them how to play golf. And so you have to, the obvious question needs to be among any politically literate people is she telling us or selling us the benefits of golf because it really will liberate black people or black youth or help black youth, or is she selling the benefits of golf because it makes her money? And we have to hold that standard with any entrepreneur that comes among us.
Right. If you look at the European Jews, they've been good at business, good as fuck at business, and been getting their asses kicked all over Europe and persecuted all over Europe for centuries. And when they went to Israel, what did they set up first? Businesses? They set up a fucking military. And then they sent a spy over here and got them to give them the nukes. And they went and got nukes. They got territory. And I'm not saying we replicate what they do. I'm just saying that it exists, being good at business. Everybody else found out business, you know, like y'all, we like to say business before pleasure. I say revolution before business, you know, because we can business ourselves to death, literally. And that's what we're doing. And so, yeah, it's a hustle. And I don't think we should be mad at entrepreneurs for acting like entrepreneurs. We should be mad at ourselves for letting them in the struggle when they have always been antagonistic to the struggle. You have to ask yourself, if we got free with this particular individual under a just system of just distribution of resources, under a system of ecological development and sustainability, under a system where there is no global imperialism and white hegemony, would this individual be better off or worse off? You have to ask that question of everybody who comes to our community. And as far as Jay-Z, he would be a lot worse off. Will Smith, Barack Hussein Obama, and Michelle, and they all gangly daughters, y'all, they would all be much worse off. So if you are going to be worse off and then you have to come and demonstrate and prove to us that you are willing to engage in class suicide, and not when the revolution come right now, today. If you're not engaging in class suicide, if you're not like Fela or Bob Marley, where you're financing guerrilla operations and buying weapons on the black markets to shunt to armed insurgents on the African continent, if you're not literally doing things to subvert your damn self, then we can't trust you. So go somewhere else. Even if you really are sincere, we have to be. Garvey said race first, and I agree, but he didn't say race only. So it's race first, class second. What is your class? And ideology third. What's your ideology? We stopped at race because he said race first. I think he consciously said first, not only. But we keep stopping at race. So any black person that come to us with some good rhetoric and some status given to them by our oppressors, we let them in. We got to stop doing that. Race first, class second, ideology third. And I got about a half dozen more to that list. But those three first. And they got to be aligned with us on all three of those things, or there's no discussion, and they can't come with us. They can't join us. They are identified as traitors and enemies.
All right, Brother Prince, go ahead.
Well, I don't mind if our sister wants to go. I can go next. I thought maybe she wanted to say something first, but I can wait.
I was simply going to say that the challenge, I think, for us is this notion of warfare. One of the challenges with our people is we're not prepared to do the level of violence, the level of physical violence. Let me be clear, because violence takes many forms. We're not prepared to do, nor am I necessarily suggesting that we should prepare to do the level of physical violence necessary to
confront these brothers.
To engage in, warfare with that type of warfare with white hegemony, with capitalism, with imperialism, with colonialism. But there are other forms of warfare with which we have a lot of control, and that is ideological, that political warfare, that is cultural warfare, that is all of those kinds of things that we have autonomy over right now. The challenge goes back to, once again, oftentimes we don't have the information, nor do we value our cultural paradigms, our ideologies, our ways of being above or even equivalent to that we see before us now in terms of power. And so our challenge becomes, we can't even wage warfare with the tools that we readily have available right now, because we don't even see them as tools. And I jokingly say to people all the time, we've been doing these presentations about intellectual property and about generational wealth transfer. people don't think that their grandmother's pie recipe is intellectual property, in that people don't see the value in it. They don't realize that they could engage in not entrepreneurship, but they could engage in a business that produced that pie recipe as a part of their legacy that also would sustain their family and possibly employ people in community and, you know, fund this, that, you know, fund whatever candidate or whatever, you know, political program that we might have, because we don't see that as a tool. We don't see that as a resource. We don't see that as property. We don't see that as anything that could even generate revenue. And so I think part of our problem is we have to address and deal with our lack of imagination, understanding that the reason why we cannot imagine a world without capitalism, we can't imagine a world without hustle culture and selling water to a well. We can't imagine these things because we have no context from when those things actually existed. And so I think part of our, you know, challenge in getting into a place where we're going to do, you know, warfare is that we have to be able to recognize the tools that we have, because we don't got nukes in our pocket. And maybe we don't want to be using nuclear warfare. That maybe that is not what we want to be engaging in. Maybe we want to use water because it has no enemy, right? And it can be used both to sustain life, but if you play with it, it can destroy life. Well, we have to be able to understand and recognize the tools and then understand how to use them.
Brother Prince, as we wrap up, I don't know if there's any more questions coming from the session, but we're gonna wrap up soon. Go ahead, Prince.
Well, I mean, to be honest, this is like honestly like a really great build, first of all. So I feel like I've learned a whole lot, definitely from everyone on here, as well as like our guests and things like that. I was just thinking, just thinking once more about, like, somebody was raising this question about confrontation, right? And what does that actually look like? You know, I definitely subscribe to political warfare, right? You know, like as I mentioned before, but there already are African people here in this society that have created some really good frameworks that I think that can be applied in each and every one of our hoods, right? So one of the things that I'm really inspired by with Dr. Jared Ball is this whole idea of he said it on this meme. I thought it was so brilliant. He was just like, I don't want the crumbs of capital. I want to own the machine that makes our bread, right? And so I think what we really have to start thinking about is looking at how can we wage a political warfare that does a couple things. One, that it highlights the ways in which both the Democrats and Republicans don't really care about us, right? Even the ways in which even during the time of COVID, right? The federal government had already released all of these funds that's really ours to begin with. But then you had a lot of Democrats, at least here in Ohio, and a lot of Republicans here that didn't even fight for us, right? To even to make sure that we get those things that are absolutely ours. Like, we really need to think about how do we take control back of that GDP, because all of those things, whether even in our own cities, right? Like my city here in Cincinnati, they generate as much as like almost $144 billion like a year, right? Like, you know, but we have this huge housing crisis that's going on that's affecting Black families. And if Dr. Jared Ball is right that it only takes $20 billion to address housing issues across all people in the United States, my city alone can definitely do that, right? So I just think that we've been marching everywhere last summer. We didn't move a political inch. And it's just time to really just see where they are not for us. And I just think that what George Jackson said is right. There needs to be a Black-led worker class party of some sort, right? And maybe that looks different for from different areas. But at the end of the day, capital is declining, right? I mean, it's on life support. It's not going to get any better. It's just going to get worse. We're going to experience this precipitous decline, right? Within purchasing power, capital, and things like that. It's leaving, right? And they at the top, they know it, right? Because otherwise, why would they take out trillions of dollars of our wealth that we all contribute every year. Like, you know, so it's just bizarre. And yeah, we start thinking about debt jubilees, canceling all debt, student debt, card debt, all that kind of stuff, right? And start thinking about how the dollar could possibly definitely be a medium, you know, for democracy. It kind of is a contradiction of myself, but I definitely do agree with Dr. Henrik Clark when he says that every society goes through these evolutions of economic changes, right? Differently, right? Like, but it is always from capitalism, socialism, and then, you know, into communism. But I think that we have to really put our minds together and create these ways that we can sustain our communities when the shock of capitalism definitely does hit our hood, right? Like, if I'm making sense there, like, you know, we're going to see more unemployment, right? We're going to see the diminishing of our wealth more and more rapidly. So what can we do in our cities to kind of help to absorb the shock ourselves, right? And that, you know, that might not even set us free, to be honest, right? Like, but we have to really start thinking about, you know, that capitalism is on life support here. It's just not working even for them at the moment right now. So, but we're going to feel it first in our communities. So land trust over real estate, right? You know, thinking about cooperatives, and other models that we can think about. But I think that we really have to get serious about engaging in political warfare and break their backs.
All right. So let us off. Will take us out. Appreciate y'all coming in. You can obviously rewatch it on YouTube or Facebook and leave your comments in the sessions. Some of the people might even come in and respond to some of your comments if it's good enough or challenging enough. But go ahead, Asafo.
So I want to thank all of our panelists, Brother Diallo, Sister Nneka, Brother Prince, and Sister Kundai. She had to step out. She had another engagement she had to go to. So we're definitely appreciative to all of you. And we're definitely thankful to our audience and people who made comments and asked questions in the chat. And we have our study group tomorrow, Thursday at 8:30. We will be wrapping up our discussion, our study of Baba Mwalimu Barudi's To Educate the People. And we also have a lecture coming up next month. Larry, what's the date for that? We're doing a lecture on, Larry Gichia will be doing a lecture on the nonprofit industrial complex. And we'll have that information up shortly after the end of this broadcast. But and we're also going to have another Bab Talk, and the guest for that will TBD, to be determined. So if you ever want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us by email, or you can reach out to us on the Barter and Build Think Tanks Facebook page. All right. So with that said, peace, everyone.
Peace, everyone.